Thank you, Board. About 50 years ago, the city planted these trees along 24th Street, and the city specifically chose ficus because they knew that they are incredibly determined trees that could survive under even the toughest urban conditions, much like the people who live in the Mission and are here representing the community today. 50 years after the city planted these trees, here we are in the third round of fighting for their preservation. Now, regardless of what you think about ficus, what we should have learned by now is that what we do today will matter 50 years from now. That what we do today shouldn't just be repeating the same mistakes. We shouldn't just make decisions based on what's best for us today, but make decisions based on what's best for us today and tomorrow and the day after that. We should be thinking not only about how to do right by this community today, but also for our children and our children's children. Unfortunately, that is not what's currently happening, because in the same year that our city officials declare we are in a climate emergency, we lost over 2,500 trees. In the same year that our Department of the Environment declares we must sequester more carbon or our environment will move past the point of no return. And by the way, carbon sequestration is what trees do 24 hours a day. We have failed to even budget enough money to plant as many trees as we remove. 50 years ago, the city made a mistake, and now it asks the Mission essentially to pay for that mistake. And it's not right. And not only is it not right, but it effectively punishes a neighborhood that already bears more than its share of polluted air. Our own Commission on the Environment recognized that the Mission suffers disproportionately from air pollution and air pollution-related illness. And the trees are a critical element of the Mission community's health. The problem is that even with everything we know, that the environment is collapsing, that the Mission is disproportionately impacted, and that we need trees more than ever in order to survive, even with all of this knowledge, we're still making decisions the same way we made them 50 years ago. We follow the rules we put in place and apply no critical thought to our actions. We're setting ourselves up for a disaster, and we're setting up future generations for disaster. We've got to do better. To that end, I want to acknowledge that Supervisor Ronen has taken a bold step, and for the first time I am aware of in San Francisco history, asked the Department of the Environment and the Department of Public Works to come together and work with this community to evaluate the potential environmental and public health implications of this proposed removal, and to come up with innovative strategies and solutions to not only mitigate these impacts, but perhaps be an example of how neighborhoods all across San Francisco can implement natural resources to make our beautiful city a more climate resilient and sustainable place. To achieve this effort, the departments have asked for all appellants, including myself, whether we would agree to a 2-month extension on this hearing to do that work. On behalf of myself and my community of tree advocates across San Francisco, I wholeheartedly agree to this proposal and offer myself as a resource to the city, the community, and the supervisor's office to assist in this effort.
Thank you, Mr. Klipp.
Thank you. Okay.
We ask that the audience not respond to any of the presentations, please.
Mr.
I know just
Mr. Carnazes, would you like to address 3 minutes? We are addressing the continuance at this point.
Hi, thank you. I really want to thank everyone out here today that came out and took time away from their lives to be here. I think it's really silly that appellants get more of a say in this process, because this is, of course, a huge community effort and a huge community issue. However, I would like to point out a couple of things. There are multiple issues here, and one of the big ones is that disabled people have been completely excluded from the so-called community process of notification of what is happening with these trees. I was here on January 23rd, 2019, in front of you and in front of Chris Buck, and I asked for a public database, an online database that disabled people could have access to so that we could know what is happening with our public trees. I quote, I said, "These notices are posted in a very small font if you have a disability, not at the right height if you're in a wheelchair, and all of this could be remedied by a public accessible map. When will we have a public map of which trees in our city are being removed, especially for those of us with disabilities that cannot just go make a perimeter of our neighborhoods to try to find out which trees are going to be destroyed while we're sick in bed? When will they do their job of answering emails in a timely fashion instead of leaving us weeks or months to wait for a response? And when will they stop wasting our taxpayer money and our personal time away from our jobs and our families to be here fighting for trees that make this city beautiful?" Chris Buck, who was present, ignored all of that, continued to ignore that for months and months and months and months, actually held hearings for these trees in June of 2019 and had a meeting apparently at the hospital in March of 2019 None of this was posted online and made accessible to disabled people, despite my repeated requests. I made requests over email, multiple dates, and it was not until I filed this appeal, all of a sudden, wow, look at that. We have an online database now of which trees are going to be removed. I find that really problematic. Why does it take disabled people to have to come up and write, what is it, a 9-page appellant brief to try to get the city to comply with the American with Disabilities Act? The American with Disabilities Act is not vague on this. The Title II, 8.2000 self-evaluation states, a public entity must review its policies and practices to determine whether any exclude or limit the participation of individuals with disabilities. Notice it does not say, if enough disabled people complain about it, then you might do something. It doesn't say that. It says self-evaluation. I think this department completely failed to do that, even with the repeated notices that I gave. I'm still waiting for notices from half a dozen emails that I've sent to the department, continues to ignore my disability accommodation requests. I just asked for a response, that's all, yes or no. We won't do that, we will do that. They won't even respond to me. And I think it's a really tragic way for a department to be handling itself and interacting with the public. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Mr. Arguello.
Good evening, members of the board. Carlos Bocanegra on behalf of Calle 24. I just wanted to come in and say that the assessment made by the department was improper because it was made in the vacuum of only assessing the trees themselves. The department failed to take diligent steps to investigate the cultural and historic significance of these trees, despite the notice they received from the community within the context of the historic planning process that was initiated in the 1970s and 1980s, as well as the current Latino Cultural District Councils and communities' intention to see the continuity of their history, identity, and heritage remain for as long as these trees are not hazardous. The Department of Public Works' attempt to remove these trees diminishes and marginalizes the community of the Latino Cultural District and the right to self-determination and planning. These trees are an important historical landmark in the development of Calle 24 Latino Cultural District, and their removal will constitute a material impairment of the intentional planning and work of this local and state-recognized Latino Cultural District. For nearly 40 years, these trees have been an identity marker rivaling La Rambla in Barcelona, Spain. These trees are part of the community and its identity. They contribute to the district's walkability, quality of life, welcome visitors, hold up and celebrate our holiday lights, protect us from rain and the summer sun. They are a visible representation of and provide continuity for the character and life of our community and the lower 24th Street corridor. So I'd ask that while we're giving this extension for 2 months, that we make sure and impress upon the Department of Public Works that we provide the community ownership in this process of studying and reviewing, that they get to participate and decide who is going to be doing the reviewing to make sure that we do have a neutral third party reviewing these trees as we go through and make sure that we give the community the respect that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, we will now hear from Ms. Sharich.
3 minutes?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Does the overhead projector work at all, or?
Yeah,
Yes, it does.
Okay,
And just face it as if you're looking at it yourself.
okay. Thank you.
Bingo.
I don't know how
Thank you.
they see, but can I zoom in as well? Oh, I see. All right, so I had prepared it on my laptop, but I don't think I can connect it here. So my name is Kendra Sherrick. I'm very happy for the opportunity to address you tonight. I am here as a very concerned citizen and also as a resident of the 24th Street corridor. And I first became aware of the war on ficus trees when I returned from a trip and saw that 2 trees on my block had been removed. As you can see from the map, it was one on either end. And I was shocked not only how it changed the entire atmosphere of the block, but also, as you can see, this is Wise Sons Deli. Oh, maybe put this up a little. This was before the ficus tree on the corner was removed. And that ficus tree provided tremendous shade to all of the residents who live in the building above, including my unit, and of course the people below on the street. After it was removed, there was direct sunlight then that occupies that space every day of the year almost, except for when we have cloudy days. And the temperature in my apartment increased vastly. This is the direct sunlight that now beats into my unit. It's not even the unit where the tree was removed. It's the unit to the side of that. So I was shocked by this impact. And then I started seeing the notices for at that time it was 70-something trees being removed, and now we have almost 50 trees that are slated to be removed in a 5-block area. It's essentially destroying the entire canopy of our neighborhood. And I started to wonder, why are we even arguing this? It's kind of a funny thing. If anybody said to you, we're going to come into your neighborhood and we're going to take away all the trees, you would say, you're crazy. You're not going to do that. And that's been a lot of the reply that I've gotten from people who don't even know this is going to happen. I say, you know that they're removing 50 trees in our neighborhood. That's 10 ficus trees per block. And people say, no, that can't be right, because it's outrageous. It feels like a direct assault on our community. It feels like a direct assault on our neighborhood. I can't overstate how traumatic this is for us. The prospect of this is for our neighborhood. So I would like to see a continuance on this matter so that we can investigate really innovative ideas to save our trees in San Francisco. It's critical. I would say that I just came from Hawaii, and there are many trees that are in disrepair and all kinds of things, and they've created structures to support those trees. Hawaii has shown what their values are around their trees. Like we are going to work to support the trees, and we need to do the same in San Francisco.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are now moving on to public comment, which is limited to 1 minute and is